And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Thank you guys for tuning in. As you guys know, we're in countdown to Prime Day is coming up next month. So make sure you guys give us a follow so you can stay connected with all of our programming here on Amazon. You'll see that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You will also see the book by our next guest, ironically, that is also coming out in July. We're excited to welcome Brian Rashad Fuller to our broadcast today. He's getting ready to celebrate now his book, Being Black in America's Schools. You guys can see it there. It's available for pre-order right now here on Amazon. We have it highlighted for you guys in the carousel there. You guys can go ahead and pre-order it now. We're going to talk to Brian not only about the writing of the book, but what's been like for him to have this conversation about race and education, what he wants you all to know about it, but also what the experience was like for him to reflect on his own journey as well. If you guys are not staying connected with Brian, we will let you guys know how to be able to find him. We also are simulcasting our broadcast. So we welcome those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, as well as on IG. Appreciate you guys already coming in heavy over there on IG. Hello to you, Dorian Evans. Going to be able to see you. Teresa Merritt Watson, I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Hello to you. Ellen, hello to you. Melvina, hello to you as well. Robert Ham, hello to you. Rob Barnes, thank you so much for being on with us as well. Ellen says, Brian, that the book is going on her bookshelf. You're going to love this one, Ellen. So I'm glad you can be with us. And Brian, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Cyrus, for having me on your platform.
Look, the pleasure's definitely all mine. So first of all, as I mentioned, the book's available for pre-order now. What has this been like for you? You've had some amazing conversations, including with one of my mentors, Tavis Smiley. What has it been like for you to be able to see the way that people are already responding to the book?
Yeah, it's been beautiful. Honestly, this writing process has been now, I would say, 3.5, almost 4 year journey, right? And the book is coming out next month, as you mentioned, and so it's been beautiful to see the response. And I think this book is so timely, especially with everything that's going on right now around public education and what I would like to say has been an attack on public education, and especially as you think about and as we think about race and education and how our education is impacting our precious little ones. And so I've been very pleased with the response, and I'm really excited for the book to come out next month and the world to read it.
So a few things here, Brian. When the book was first pitched to me, when I first got the first email about it, I was automatically intrigued by it. Then when I started reading it, I was surprised because I have to
Mhm.
admit, I did not expect to see so much of you in the book. I really
Mhm.
thought it was going to be more of a broader view of education,
Mhm.
which is, that's great, I think, to be able to look at it. But I think the fact that you were able to personalize it based on your own experiences really makes it, I think, more impactful for the reader. So I do want to ask you, was that something you knew initially you wanted to do? That you know initially you wanted to be able to tell your own story and your own journey through the education system while also shining this larger spotlight on the education system?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it actually was very intentional. I've been working in education now for a little over a decade. And I know as educators, we are often inundated with theories and statistics and just the rhetoric and the pundits and the politics of it all. And I think at the heart and underneath all of that is story, right? It's the individual, it's our individual students, it's our individual stories. And so it was really intentional for me to tell my own story and my own experiences, so I can humanize what we often see so much in our news feeds, and really allow the reader to connect on a personal human level, then and use that as a gateway into what I believe are some of the inherent issues within our educational system, and really spark change, right? Because if you can see yourself in a story and you can understand it and you can put yourself in someone's shoes, then that is a catalyst to make you want to be an agent of change. And so that's what I wanted to do with this book, and that's why it was really intentional for me to use myself and be vulnerable and use my story to start to shed light on some of the issues that I think are inherent within our education system.
Yeah, and I want to say though, for those who have not had a chance to read an advance copy, like I had the privilege of doing, Brian, there are some things I want you guys to know that Brian did in this book that I personally resonated with, and that is being able to show that yes, we're talking about education, but Brian, we also have to say you're also talking about the foundation at home too.
Yep.
And you had the opportunity, like myself here in Mississippi, where I grew up. I still work with the school systems here and being able to go in and to try to inspire kids. But one thing I always tell them is that I was one of those, as a country boy here in Mississippi, people talked about me like, where are you from? I'm from here. But people didn't always appreciate that my Southern dialect was a little bit different, especially people like me. And so I had the name calling, you don't talk black, you don't dress black, and you're doing well in school. You're not supposed to be doing well in school. We don't do well in school. And I'm thinking to myself, who told you that? What was it like for you to realize that your journey, even as a person of color,
Yeah.
may be different than your counterparts in school?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that piece about having the foundation because I'm a Southern boy as well. Grew up in South Carolina, and I talk about that a lot in the book. And I had that foundation at home with my mother, with my grandparents, with my aunts and uncles, and it was when I entered into school into where I'm from in the town in South Carolina, I started to see those disparities, right? And how students who look like me, how they were treated, also how they expected me to act, right? In comparison to those who did not necessarily look like me. And it was something that, and I talk a lot about navigating that and the toll, psychological, emotional toll that took on me in school, because it did take a toll and it was difficult at times. And just me wrestling with my identity and what it meant to be a black boy in South Carolina public school, and what other people thought that meant as well, right? And so, and me not subscribing to that, and so I think all of it played a big part, and so it was really important for me to talk about because, like yourself, Cyrus, I feel like so many of our students go through that same thing, and it was really important for me to highlight.
Yeah, and I think too, and I want our audience to know the reason why I'm spending time talking about this, Brian, is because it is connected to the school experience.
Yep.
I can remember being in high school, and you kind of talked about an experience in middle school, but in the book, but I can remember in high school where I had a coach that was my social studies teacher, and I know you also talked about some of the subjects with you, but I the assignment was, and I still remember this because how some of the black kids felt in the class, where we had to list as many cities and capital and states as we could, and I had one of the highest scores. And he said, "Cyrus, you did really, really well as a black boy." And this was a white teacher who said this. Now, me knowing this coach and knowing him, I knew it was not. He didn't mean it in a derogatory way. It didn't come out the best. He
Yeah,
could have
right.
said it differently. But some of the classmates had problems with that. But what he was trying to say was he wasn't used to
Hmm.
a lot of the black males doing as well. He's normally teaching jocks who
Hmm.
and so I bring that up for this reason. You go through a point in the book, Brian, where you talk about you got to a place where you didn't worry so much about that. It wasn't
Yeah.
about what you were, how people saw you. It really was about trying to get the most out of your education, even when you felt like a class wasn't right for you. Being able to speak up for yourself, to look for another class. Talk about that and what that's been like for you in this conversation, to let people know that they have to advocate for themselves as well.
Yeah, I think, especially, and to your point, being a student of color in our public school systems, it is always about advocating for yourself. I talk a lot about it in the book, especially in the final chapter about the history of how our education system came about, and from my opinion, the intentional design to and in many ways perpetuate this racial caste system that we have within America, and our school systems do it every day. And so, being a student of color, being a black male student in school, I had to advocate for myself to navigate successfully. And thankfully, I had my family at home, and my mom was. Always taught me to advocate for myself. And so, because of that, when I was in school and I came across these challenges or these barriers that I talk a lot about in the book, I was able to navigate them in a I, quote unquote successful way because of my advocacy, right? And because I was like, well, regardless of what my teacher might think or what my peers might think, I still I know what I want to do, and I know that I want to be successful in this class, and so I'm going to advocate for myself to be able to do that. And I think the challenge with that, though, is every student isn't necessarily going to do that, right? And
Right.
so it is, and so it was important for me to talk about my own advocacy, right, to then encourage students, parents, families, anyone who is interested in the education system and how we educate Black and brown kids to be advocates, but then also to help us think about our school system in a way that children don't have to fight so much and fight against these barriers to just have a successful, positive experience in school.
Love that. Chanel Coleman Wesley is joining us from Wisconsin. She said on Facebook, she said, this is a great topic. Good afternoon. Hello to you, Chanel. Good to be able to see you over there as well. Hello to you, Seppi. Good to be able to see you over there on IG. Ellen says on IG, Brian, looking forward to reading your book. How do you feel about parents who do not advocate for their children and allow the school to think for them? Great question, Ellen. I'll throw that to you, Brian.
Yeah, that is a great question, Ellen. Thank you for joining. I think a lot of what I've seen in my experience as an educator and in dealing with parents is the thing about school is it's the great unifier. We've all experienced school, and oftentimes parents who are not as quick to advocate have had their own negative experiences in school, right? And so they might feel a little shy about advocating or feel like, oh, that's not their place because of their own preconceived notions and their own experiences that they bring with them now that they're parents. And so I always encourage parents to speak up, even if there's no question that is a dumb question, a silly question. There's no question that you shouldn't feel comfortable to ask. You should always be an advocate for your child, because oftentimes teachers have many students, and so sometimes students fall through the cracks, and so you're going to know your child better than the teacher will, right? And then it's up to that educator to then build that relationship with your child, but then also build that relationship with you. And so I would say, even if it makes you uncomfortable, push yourself to advocate, push yourself to go meet your child's teachers and really ask questions. And no question is a silly question. No question is a wrong question. Ask questions and try to really build that relationship with that educator, because it's going to be necessary for your child's success. And me as an educator, and when I was in the classroom, I always encouraged parents. If I didn't hear from parents, I would encourage them to speak up, because I think it is so important, that advocacy from the family standpoint, because that's who our kids are learning from. They're learning from us, right? They're learning from the adults. And so your advocacy teaches your child how to advocate for themselves as well.
Such a good point. Chanel says having the ability to advocate for yourself is such an underrated skill. Totally agree. You do give a great what if scenario in the book, Brian, and I want to read it. But I want to first say, for those who are just tuning in on Amazon, welcome. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon. If you guys have not done so already, make sure you guys give the show a follow. You can see the follow button either here in this corner down below. We're on the countdown to Prime Day coming up in July, but also the release of the book by our current guest. We're excited to welcome to our broadcast today. You guys can see there, Brian Rashad Fuller. His new book is called Being Black in America's Schools. It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon. It's coming out officially July 23rd. We also, of course, have all of the comment sections open on YouTube, over on Instagram, as well as on LinkedIn and Facebook and X. So if you guys have any questions or comments for Brian, make sure you guys put those in the comment section. Tina, hello to you. Good to see you over there on IG. Brandon Coleman. Hey, Brian. Brandon, good to be able to see you, man. Haven't seen you in a while. Hope all is well. I want to read something you wrote in the book, okay, Brian, and we talk about it. It's in the chapter, Oh, the Places You Will Go. So this is the question that you pose here. So the question to pose is, what would happen if we did things differently? What if high school empowered students, encouraged civic engagement, truly affirmed racial, cultural, sexual, gender, and religious identities? What if we fostered original ideas, supported critical thinking, challenged societal norms, and provided tools and resources for students to chart their own paths? What if high school was the last stop on the education journey that freed us from all the script and embedded caste system that society has given us? What would that mean for our educational system? What would it mean for our nation? And I think that the reason why I wanted to share that, Brian, because it does show that it all builds on one another. How individuals do at home, how they do at school, impacts how they're able to do in the world. So talk to us about that, because it seemed like that part of the book is really toward us all, but especially for those who have the ability to evoke change. So talk to us about what you hope this book does when it comes to getting people to change the way they look at the educational system.
Yeah, thank you so much for reading that section of the book. And this book is and that's why the subtitle is A Call for Change, because it's really a call to action to all of us, uh, to have those hypotheticals, and really for us to dream and dream big about what this education system can be for all students, and specifically for Black and Brown that have been underrepresented and underserved by the system. And I think uh, and I said those words and wrote those words in that section because I think high school is the end of that K-12 experience. And as you said, it all builds upon each other, right? And I think that oftentimes by the time many students and many Black and Brown students are at that stage of high school, they have been the creativity, the excitement, the just vigor for learning has been beaten out of them in a sense, or pushed out of them, or silenced. And I think that happens consistently throughout year over year in school. And so I pose that question of, what if we do things differently? What if we look at school differently? What if we affirm identities, racial, ethnic, sexual identities, gender identities? What if we also encourage creativity and encourage the people to think outside the box? And one of the things that's really important for me, and I talk about in the last chapter of the book, is this idea of liberatory education and the development of critical consciousness in our youth and in our students. And I think that it is so important, the development of critical consciousness, because once students begin at a certain age, and I believe it's middle school, and James Baldwin talks about this too, and I reference him a lot in the book, is once you get a certain age, students start to then become conscious of the society that they live in. We as people become conscious of that society, and then you start to have questions about it, right? And sometimes you are vocal about those questions, other times you aren't, but you're still understanding the society, and society is teaching you something about yourself, those who look like you, those who have your same lived experiences, and then it's teaching you something about those who don't, right? And I think in our schools, we don't encourage those type of conversations, and we don't allow for that. And oftentimes when students do bring that up, and especially Black and Brown students, we punish them for it. And I use another example in the book in middle school, where me and a group of friends did that, challenged a policy that we felt like there was a disparity in implementation, but we were met with punishment and met with a negative reaction. And so I think it's so important for us to really think out our traditional ways of thinking about education, and really move towards a more liberatory education for our students. And because our students are our future, right? And our youth are our future. And we should be encouraging our youth to challenge our society there, and many of them are already doing it, right? But we should be encouraging it in healthy ways, and I think school could be a great platform for that.
Such a great point. Midnight is Book Bar. Hello to you over on IG. Good to be able to see you. Robert, Reading Room. Good to be able to see you over on IG as well. If you guys are not following Brian, we will let you guys know, of course, how to be able to do that. The book, again, is officially coming out in July, but it is available right now for pre-orders. So if you guys are joining us on the Amazon side, you guys can see it right there. All you have to do is click on it, go ahead and pre-order it, and make sure you guys do check out so you can be able to have it for when it does release. For those joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, you will find a link that will bring you guys over to Amazon to be able to get the book. For those who are joining us on IG and X, we'll have to put the link after the conversation. We can't embed that in the live feed for you guys, so we will put it there. Brian, what is your hope as people read Being Black in America's School, even for those, I would argue, even for people who are not people of color?
Yeah.
Reading this book because a lot of times people don't even know what they don't know, right? They don't know what's out there. What do you hope this book does in opening their eyes, but also getting them to try to do things differently?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think one of the first things that I hope people get from this book is just an understanding of how our education system has historically, and still to this day, has been set up to have the outcomes that it has, right? In terms of the racial, ethnic disparities, social, economic disparities that it has in outcomes, and just that acknowledgement and that understanding that our educational system in present day is every day perpetuating a social, racial caste system in our classrooms. And so having that understanding, but then with that understanding, then lighting a fire inside for us to those who are educators, those who work in education, but then those who are interested in education, right? Those who have kids, those who are just interested in our society, to start to then interrogate and really question those systems, right? If you are a parent, go up to your school, and learn about how the school policies, the systems and structures within the school. Talk to your child about their experience. If you are an educator, think about how you are structuring your classroom. Think about how you're structuring your curriculum. Is your curriculum inclusive? Are you affirming the identities of your students in the classroom? Are you allowing your students to be creative? Are you encouraging your students to be critical thinkers of their society? And then lastly, I think for those of us that have the power to really be able to implement change, to actually do that, right? Like, so it's acknowledge where our educational system is. And so acknowledging that we perpetuate a racial caste system, racial and social caste system every day within our schools, then start to interrogate and audit those practices and policies from wherever you stand within the education system and wherever you sit, whether you're a parent, whether you're inside the education system, or whether you're just a citizen interested, and then start to implement that change. And that's what I really hope that this book does, and just teaches us to humanize all of our students. All of our students deserve it. Every single student, a Black student, a brown student, every student in between, deserves to be humanized and deserves to feel like they are enough, and they belong within our society, and most importantly within our education system.
Such a great point. Such a great conversation with you, Brian. LOT Manswell T. Peterson, good to see you over there on IG. He says hello. Ellen says volunteering is so important as well. This is good. Great point, Ella, for sure. That's why, I think, for myself, Brian, I don't have any kids of my own, but I ever since I've been out of the school system and had a platform, I always go back into the schools and, work with the kids. We do workshops and those sort of things that try to really for one, to show people what's possible, the kids know what's possible, but also to let the teachers know that they have support, which I think is also an important conversation to have, because I know I've seen it here in Mississippi, and I know you've seen it also, that, a lot of teachers feel like they're fending for themselves, and so I think, for them to know that there are people who have their back is important. We have some more comments coming in on Facebook as well. Tracy, hello to you, Tracy. Tracy and I just met in Atlanta. Do you think that our kids are not critical thinkers because we are no longer in schools with majority brown and Black people? Oh, interesting. Do you think they don't weigh situations because of where they go to school? That's, as an educator, I'm gonna let you handle that. Brian, what do you think?
No, that's a great question, Tracy, and I think that's been a debate for a long time, since Brown v. Board of Education, and even prior, right? We had segregated schools, and then the 1954 ruling ruled to desegregate schools, and it took many years to desegregate schools after that, and many of our schools are still segregated today. And I think that I'm going to answer your question in two parts. And so I do think that regardless of where a student is, a Black or brown student is in school, they still should be able to be and encouraged to be critical thinkers, right? And oftentimes, to your point, and research shows, and I talk about it in my book, when Black and brown people are placed in majority white environments, they often feel isolated, and they often are made to feel isolated in direct and indirect ways, right? And so, to your point, then that would encourage them not to necessarily be critical thinkers, or not to necessarily speak up about their ideas. And so, I think that is a design flaw, right? That we can work to change. And then for those students that are in those all Black and brown spaces, I taught in a fully Black and brown school, and I would say that it's still not even encouraged there, right? Because we still sometimes feel like we are so worried about behaviors and making sure that our students are behaving, and we have this sense of control, and we're able to get through our lesson, that we don't encourage that critical thinking that you're talking about, and that you're alluding to in your question. And so I would say, in predominantly white spaces and in the majority Black and brown spaces, we still don't do a good job of encouraging our students to be critical thinkers, because I don't think that, honestly, the way that our educational system is set up, we don't want it, right? And our lessons don't encourage it, our designs don't encourage it. And not to say that every school is like that. They do have some great schools out there that do encourage it, but those are far and few in between. And I think that as a whole, that we can do a better job regardless of the educational environment for the students.
Such a great point. IG Live with Angela. Hello to you over on IG. I have to give a shout out to Smilo Prep in Jackson, Mississippi. For the last 2 years, I've worked on a project with them. From the administration on down, just so much support for the young people, really pushing them to be able to embrace their own, individual qualities, but also to know the importance of being able to work together. It's been great watching them. We have some comments coming in from LinkedIn too, Brian. That's one of the great things about the live broadcast, is that we do get some great thoughts here. Norma McLaughlin, who's joining us on Facebook, says that's why we started a private academy. We all need to be a change agent. I'm so happy to hear you. Thank you so much for joining, Norma. Appreciate that. Got a comment from LinkedIn from Athena. Brian, she says, loving this conversation. Thank you for the insight. I'm thinking about intersectionality and how there is not one singular Black identity. We were talking about that earlier, Brian. What are your thoughts on how the U.S. education system oversimplifies the experiences of Black students, and what's missing from the conversation? Now, that's a deep one.
Yeah,
but, I'll let you kind of ponder that one.
yeah. Well, thank you, Athena, for your very thoughtful question. I really appreciate it. I think this stems to what I talk about a lot, is the core of the issue within one of the core issues that I think that is inherent within our education system, and it's essentially perpetuating. When I say our education system perpetuates racial caste system, it is perpetuating white supremacy. And the crux of white supremacy is the dehumanization of everybody else who's not white and who does not fit into that category. And so when you're saying that our education system oversimplifies what it means to be Black, I completely agree. And I think that happens because in our education system, Black people, Black and brown people, aren't seen as fully human. Whereas the white experience, when you think about how we teach every subject, not just history, but every subject, we have white individuals throughout history and throughout American history and throughout our subject teaching are able to be humanized. You're able to hear their stories, and you're able to see different aspects of their human lived experiences, whether that be through literature, whether that be through social studies, whether that be through math, whether that be through science. But oftentimes Black and brown people aren't able to see that same thing. And so I think one of the ways that you can start to counter that is to really just be more inclusive in the curriculum and in the education that you have for your students, right? Because we all are full human beings, and we all need to be represented as full human beings within our school systems. And so I think that's a great question, and I totally agree with you.
Thank you for that, Athena. Thanks to all of you for this conversation. Brian's going to be joining me on Conversations Live, the radio show. Unfortunately, of course, we're not able to get the feedback like this, so we appreciate you guys joining us. But you guys can be able to join it here on the radio side here in Mississippi, WYAD 94.1 FM. It is going to be on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio as well, so you guys can be able to catch the conversation there. And we want you guys to continue the conversation as the book is officially releasing in July. Again, you guys can see the title there, Being Black in America's Schools. It's available right now for pre-order from Brian Rashad Fuller. You guys can be able to get it, of course, in the print edition or the Kindle edition for pre-order. You can go ahead. Norma says she's going to go ahead and pre-order hers now. We appreciate that, Norma.
Thank you, Norma.
And Brian, really appreciate you for one thing I want to say for writing this book, but also about being able to have some important conversations, because I think there are several layers to this. Yes, I think there's definitely work to be done in the educational system, and people can argue about, where the responsibility lies and where we need to work. But I think a lot of it has to do with us also as individuals, as was mentioned, I think, and alluded to by Athena, and realize that we are all different and that we have to do our part as individuals as well. And I think that's a big part of this too. Norma says we are in the process of developing a curricula for African-American students. I think,
awesome.
Norma, correct me, I think you're in North Carolina. I think she is. Brian. But Brian, let our audience know. I mentioned where the book's available for pre-order here on Amazon, but how can they stay connected with you?
Yeah, so you can stay connected with me through my Instagram. So my Instagram handle is brfuller. So that's BRFULLER_. So you can follow me there on Instagram. You also, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. You can just search my name, Brian Fuller. I currently am in New York City. I work for a university called the New School. So Brian Fuller, the New School, I'll pop right up. And then you can find all of my handles and everywhere you can find me on my website, which is Brian Rashad Fuller. So just my full name as you see it on the screen, brianrashadfuller.com. And through there, you can email me directly and I will respond to your email and would love to just continue the conversations with anyone who wants to have the conversation.
Awesome. Well, Brian, congratulations again. Looking forward to our upcoming radio conversation as well. And also, of course, continued success to you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cyrus.
And more than welcome. And we thank you for tuning into this episode of Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys, again, are on the Amazon side, make sure you guys do go ahead and add the book to cart. Don't forget to check out. If you guys are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, you will see a link that will bring you guys over to Amazon to be able to get the book for yourself. For those tuning in on X and Instagram, we'll add it after the conversation is over. For you guys on IG, I'll put it in my stories there as well. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb, and thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. I appreciate you guys joining us for another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Take care.